Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Steve. The other day I put out a short video mentioning how we would know what was beyond the universe. In other words, the question was, can the universe have an ending? And if it does have an ending, what is beyond that? So I thought I would visit that topic in today's podcast, and let's look at it from a Christian perspective. To start with, let's go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. As a Christian, either you believe that or you don't. For that matter, as a non-Christian, either you believe that or you don't. The universe is vast and very large in the sense of measuring and calculating just how big it really is. And when we discuss the universe and its beginning, there really isn't an answer. What this is all about is referred to as quantum cosmology. So I'll title today's podcast, Quantum Cosmology from a Christian Perspective. As a Christian, it's fundamental that you believe God created the universe. If you leave out the God factor in your quantum cosmology, then you are going to struggle to understand things about the universe, the earth, humankind, and why we exist, to be honest. Let's look at some articles that have recently come out about space exploration. It seems to me, from what I'm reading, every time the scientists send out a spaceship to explore the universe, that they find out it's larger and bigger and more far-reaching than they thought beforehand. Then they send another spaceship out and they determine that the universe is even still bigger, larger, and farther reaching than thought beforehand. So let's look at some comments from the scientific community concerning some of this space exploration. Astronomers have detected what appear to be 6 massive and very ancient galaxies, a discovery they say could upend our understanding of how galaxies formed at the very beginning of the universe. While the new James Webb Space Telescope has already spotted even older galaxies, it's the size and maturity of these 6 apparent mega galaxies that have stunned scientists. Quote, "We expected only to find tiny, young baby galaxies at this point in time, but we've discovered galaxies as mature as our own in what was previously understood to be the dawn of the universe." End quote. So you can see here the struggle even within the scientific community to come up with an answer concerning the beginning of the universe and how large the universe really is. Let's look at some other statements. This article, James Webb Telescope finds ancient galaxy larger than our Milky Way, and it's threatening to upend cosmology. This is by Ben Turner, dated February 20th, 2024. And there's a quote down here, "Having these extremely massive galaxies so early in the universe is posing significant challenges to our standard model of cosmology. Study co-author Claudia Lagos, an associate professor of astronomy at the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, said in a statement. This is significant because we're seeing that the scientific community really can't come up with an answer as to when the universe began or really how large it is. So finally, this article says, talking about finding new galaxies, such large structures should not exist according to one of the guiding principles of astronomy, called the cosmological principle. This states that all matter is spread smoothly across the universe. So don't get me wrong, I'm all in for scientific discovery, research, and all of that. But when we try to define something as large as the universe with our finite human understanding, we run into problems. Furthermore, when we try to define the universe, our existence as humankind, the earth, the planets, the solar system, and all the physical astronomical features of the universe, we run into problems if we leave God out of the calculation. Conversely, if you simply believe that God exists and that He created the universe, that fills in so many blank spaces of our limited understanding of the universe, when it began, how big it is, and how far it goes. Since we're on the subject, the reality is, as well as the future has no limitation, in the sense that the future goes on indefinitely, the past also is forever. The past goes forever, as does the future goes forever. This is a concept that's very difficult to the human mind. The reality is, in the spiritual realm, there is no beginning and there is no end. There is no beginning in the sense of the existence of time and space. There is no beginning when it comes to God. God always was. He has no beginning. He is the Alpha and the Omega. There is no beginning with God, and it's vitally important that we as Christians understand this. If a Christian is going to adopt an understanding of God that limits God in time and space, then that Christian is going to struggle. On the other hand, if a Christian adopts a God who has no limitation, who has no limitation in the spirit realm, who has no limitation in the natural realm, a God who has no beginning, and a God who has no ending. That God is a God you can put your trust in, your hope in, and believe will offer some remedy for our human condition. And He does that. He did that by sending His Son, Jesus Christ, to come as a man, to live as a man on the earth, but yet He was God. Jesus was God and Jesus was man at the same time. Some refer to this as God-man. Jesus was that. And Jesus is that. Jesus came as a man, lived as a man, experienced all the problems that a man might experience and all the temptations that a man might experience, yet he did not sin. He never gave in to human temptation to sin. Therefore, Jesus could offer himself up as a sinless, spotless, blemishless sacrifice for the sins of all humanity. It's key to understand this about Jesus. Jesus offered himself up as a sinless sacrifice for the sins of mankind. And to further understand this, one has to have some understanding of the Old Testament animal sacrifices, in that by the law of Moses, the animal that was brought to the tabernacle in the wilderness for sacrifice had to be without spot and without blemish. In other words, the best that you had. So Jesus comes as a man. He fulfills the law and the prophets. Jesus fulfills the law of Moses. Jesus offers himself up as a pure, holy, spotless sacrifice for the sins of mankind. And once and for all enters the throne room of heaven and presents himself before God the Father and completes the remedy, completes the requirement that God has for the sins of man. That is why it is so crucial. That is why it is key. That is why it is imperative that we as human beings acknowledge and accept the blood sacrifice of Jesus for our sins.